Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Sickle again. This second video we are going to talk about in-text citations, also called parenthetical citations. This is probably going to be new information, at least for most 7th graders. You are now going to be required to have in-text citations to go along with your research. We're going to start off by watching this video.
When you write a research assignment, it's important that you acknowledge the ideas or quotes from other sources that you use, right when you use them. Not only does this show that you're an honest and ethical student, but it also tells the reader exactly where you found that awesome piece of information. So, how do you give credit to other sources in your assignments? You use in-text citations, which can also be called parenthetical citations. An in-text citation connects information you're borrowing from a source to a citation in your bibliography, which helps teachers and classmates understand where the information originally came from. Include an in-text citation in your paper when you use a quote word for word from a source, or when you borrow an idea or phrase from someone else. In-text citations have to be written in a special way. They require 4 things in this order: an open parentheses, the author's last name, the page number that you found the information on, and a close parentheses. In-text citations are placed inside the sentence, so make sure that the period is outside of the parentheses. If you are using a source word for word in your paper, you need to put quotation marks around it. This is called a direct quote. Let's say that I found a sentence on page 20 of The Giver by Lois Lowry that explains an important part of the story. If I take all or even just part of the sentence, word for word, and put it in my paper, I would need to include quotations around it and add an in-text citation, like this. Let's say you want to explain something that happened in The Giver, but you explain it in your own words instead of taking it straight out of the book. This is called a paraphrase, and while you don't need to include quotation marks, you still need to include an in-text citation. This will give credit to Lois Lowry's writing, and let your teacher or classmates know where the event happened in the book. Remember, make sure that the first word in the in-text citation matches the first word in the citation of your bibliography. That way, when people want to learn more about the source in your paper, all they have to do is look for the same word in the bibliography to find it. Let's review. The in-text citation takes readers to a specific citation in your bibliography, and the specific citation tells the readers where they can find the piece of information you used. There are special rules and exceptions for using in-text citations, so if you're unsure, check with your librarian or teacher, just in case. A great site for practicing the rules of in-text citations is noreadinc.com. Check out a practice exercise now by going to this link.
That video had a ton of information for us, so we're just going to kind of break it down a little bit and kind of go over some specifics. One thing that they covered in the video was the 4 parts of an in-text citation, and they are: you have to start with an open parentheses, you're going to have the author's last name, the page number, if available, and a closed parentheses. If you remember, they told us one thing that should match in the in-text citation and bibliography. Do you remember what that was? If so, write it down in your notes right now. Okay, dealing with in-text citations. If you caught onto the video, anytime you use this in-text citation, and here's an example here, and here's an example here, those in-text citations that are at the end of our sentence, notice that the period always comes last. Okay, so really when we're talking about, you may actually have 4 or an additional 5, things as part of your in-text citation. An open parentheses, author's last name, page number, close parentheses, and then we're always going to add our punctuation here. Not in front of the in-text citation, it will always go at the end, and it usually is always going to be a period. You shouldn't be adding any kind of crazy punctuation at the end of our in-text citations. With in-text citations, these are so important because they lead us to the bibliography that we already created, or works cited page that's going to be at the end of our essay. That first word of an in-text citation must match. the first word of our bibliography. And if you didn't get the answer to that question in your notes over here, please make sure you go back and add that. That first word of our in-text citation must match that first word that we have in our bibliography. If you use something as an in-text citation, it must have an entry in the bibliography. And if you have an entry in the bibliography, it must have an in-text citation, because that's how it works. Our in-text citation leads us to our bibliography. Our bibliography, or works cited page, leads us to the original source of information. So if I have a bibliography, I have to have an in-text citation of where I used it. And if I have an in-text citation, that should lead me directly to my bibliography where I've cited that source. Please make sure that this is done when we get to our research essay later on in this unit. I have some information, and the rest of this information, because it is a lot, guys, is all going to be found in your notes. And this is just going to let you know all of the different ways that you can add an in-text citation, because it all is going to be kind of different. So like in the video and in your notes, this first part that I'm looking at over in your notes over here, this is how a normal in-text citation would look. So if I am going to use the author's name and page number in the in-text, I don't use the author's name and page number to introduce the quote or paraphrase that I'm using. So this is going to be more of like a normal one. However, if I choose to introduce the author when I am writing, so in this example down below, I have Wordsworth stated that the romantic poetry, yada, yada, yada. Since I use the author's name here, all I need to put in my in-text citation is the page number, okay? But I'm still punctuating everything correctly. The next option that we have over on the slides over here and also in your notes is if I decide to use the page number to introduce a paraphrase, then it may look something like this, like on page 263. Then I just put the author's name in my in-text citation. Note that in all of these examples that we have, the period always goes after our in-text citation, not before and after, just after. That will end the sentence. Yes, it looks weird because our in-text citation looks like it's part of the sentence, but that's the way that we need to do that. The next thing that we have is if we don't have an author. And this is going to happen to a lot of you as you are researching. And it's not a problem if you don't have the author, because when we don't have the author, this is where we use the article title. We kind of talked about in the first video that if I use bibme.org to make my bibliography, if I don't have an author, the first thing there will be the article title. And our article title will also be used in our in-text, because remember, the first word of our in-text citation is also going to be the first word of our bibliography at the end of our essay. So it's the same thing here. So if I have this example here, I have the article title in quotes with my page number. My period is still here at the end. Do notice that the quotes are around the article title here. Okay, we're going to get a little bit more tricky with these in-text citations, but once you guys have the hang of this and have a chance to practice, I think you'll really understand where we're going here. So sometimes you're going to see an article that has multiple authors, and that's also not a problem. Okay, so first let's look, if I have a source that has two authors, I'm going to use both of the last names in order of how they appear on my article. So I just used this example of my last name and Mrs. Reach, but I am going to have Sickle and spelled out Reach, my page number, and my period here at the end. So I just will use both authors' last names. However, when you have a source that has 3 or more authors, we're going to use some Latin, okay? First, we're only going to use the first author's last name. Notice how we're always using the last name here. We are never going to use the author's first name. Then we're going to replace the additional last names with these letters. E-T space A-L period. Et al is that Latin abbreviation, which just means plural names. You always have to put a period after the A-L period. It's going to look like this in this example. So let's say I have this quote about global warming, and the first author's name listed is Sickle. So it's going to look like this: Sickle space ET space AL period, my page number, close parentheses, and then always that period at the end, which is going to be the case usually for all in-text citations. I know this is a new concept for you, but I really do think once you get practicing, you're going to get the hang of this. So to kind of review some things that we have talked about in this video, you are going to use bidme.org to create bibliography entries. Okay, we're always going to make sure if I create a bibliography entry for a source, I need to have an in-text citation or citations when I paraphrase, quote, or summarize something in my paper. There are 4 parts to an in-text citation. We should have open parentheses plus author last name, and remember this could be last names, plus page number plus close parentheses. At the end of a sentence, the period always goes after our in-text citation. So for example, I would have Johnson for close parentheses, my period. And then remember, sometimes I don't need an author's name or page number if I introduce the source in my sentence. So for example, Johnson states, Mrs. Sickle is the best. Since I use the author's last name Johnson, I'm just going to put my page number there at the end. You are going to have some review time. The next thing in your list of to-do is going to send you to a website called noredink.com, and it's going to have you join the course that is created there for you, and you will have some built-in practice time to get you prepared to pass that quiz. Good luck, guys. Talk to your teachers if you don't understand anything, but I think you guys will do great.